It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set!
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle. Once again, it is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands. Heard around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Download it today. It is free. Clemson Tom steps into the arena out of the gates here to hang out with us on a windy Friday afternoon as the remnants of Hurricane Ian make its way through the Midlands of South Carolina. If you're out there, be safe. High wind conditions are going on, and it looks like better and better for Clemson and NC State. Looks like the weather might not be as bad as we once anticipated for a top 10 matchup in Death Valley. Top 10 matchup. Say it again. In Death Valley. 803-450-0086. That's the way you can be a part of this program. Clemson Tom joins us on a Friday. CT, what's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what's up. It's my blood pressure. First off, I hate NC State. It's hate week. I hate a wolf. I hate Team Jacob. I hate Twilight. I hate the wolf pack of NWO. I hate them all. I hate NC State. I hate Dave Doran. Swanny, I'm ready to go. Strap on the helmet. Let's go.
Look, it's exciting, too, I think, because and first off, we should check in on you. Obviously, you're in the state of Florida. I know there's been a lot of devastation from Hurricane Ian. So I will ask you, Tom, how did you and your family come through, and how was your area of Florida?
Orlando got hit really, really hard. The eye honestly went over our house. But it was kind of scary. I'm not going to lie to you. Orlando's flooded in like the old parts of Orlando.
Yeah.
Over where we live, that area got built up in the early 2000s, so the drainage is a lot better. But there's still parts of Orlando that are flooded. I know cars are underwater in some areas. People are still without electricity, so thankful. You know, where we were at, the worst thing that happened was a tree in our backyard fell down, but that's it. It just fell. Nothing didn't land on nothing. We're good to go.
Oh, well, that's good. So, yeah, and again, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody down there. And certainly as Hurricane Ian moves through the state of South Carolina today, I guess one of the big benefits for those of us who are planning on being in Death Valley for this matchup is the fact that it doesn't look like there's going to be a ton of significant weather conditions that play out in this game. I mean, there might be some winds, there might be a little rain, but nothing by comparison to maybe what we thought we'd see on Monday. You know, does that favor, in your opinion, Clemson or NC State, Tom, that it might actually be pretty decent weather?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the storm's going to do, but if it misses y'all, you should be good to go. But, I mean, I'll play NC State in a hurricane just like we did Notre Dame. I'll play them in the parking lot. You know, I'll play them in West Virginia. I'll play them in Raleigh. I do not like the team. I don't like their coach. I haven't liked him since he bragged about knocking out our running back.
Wayne Gallman? Yeah.
And then about Wayne, and then there was the laptop. Oh, that Clemson had a laptop on the sideline. Like, no, we don't. If we do, it's like we have a social media team, and they're doing their own thing. They're not a part of the game. Like, Dave is the God. I just don't like him. Everything about the man, just he ain't for me, bro. The quicker they fire him at NC State, the better. You know, last year they ended up beating us. I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot of revenge factor. You know, we better strap it on, man, because they're gonna come and try to fight us. Like, this is, like I even said it last week, this is our first true test, and people are like, well, "What about Wake Forest?" I'm like, "Look, man, Wake Forest out. Yeah, they took us to double overtime, but NC State's a different beast, and I think that's going to be a true test of our strength, our mental game, everything. How tough are we? Because NC State is going to fight you. You know, Wake Forest they'll just hang with you. But NC State's going to be, you know, right there to the wire. You know, still battling, still clawing, still everything. So this is going to be a true test of who we are, in my opinion.
Again, that's a 7:30 kickoff in Clemson. As it looks right now, only about a 3% chance of rain at kickoff, partly cloudy skies, and the rain is actually supposed to stop in Tigertown about 4 a.m., given the fact that Hurricane Ian has shifted way to the east. Looks like she'll make more landfall near Charleston, Myrtle Beach area than Savannah, which would have put her on a path towards Clemson. Now, with that could mean that the quarterback play through the air becomes a much bigger weapon than we anticipated a few days ago. But the good news, I would say, at this point, Tom, is what you saw from DJ Uiagalelei this past weekend at Wake Forest. What was your vibe after watching DJ throw for 5 touchdowns and spin the magic bean down the field?
You know, he looked good. You know, I'm proud of that kid. You know, he could have easily just clammed up and been like, this ain't for me. I think that shows a lot of his character. He tuned out all the negativity because he could have easily listened to everybody. But that kid went out there, lost weight, learned the playbook a little bit more. And he showed a lot of heart, man. That guy got him in a single leg takedown. DJ planted that one good foot, you know, and put it in there. We saw a lot of DJ that should have silenced a lot of his haters, but you're still going to have some people that are going to say whatever they want to say. I don't care. The kid shows some heart. He shows some grit. I think he's going to come out and just sling it on NC State. We've got to play with a different mentality tomorrow night. We've got to come out and just the words I want to say I can't say on air, but if you know how I'm feeling. It's got to be WrestleMania, Stone Cold coming out there beating Triple H. You got to have a little bit of swagger of The Rock and just that no-die attitude like The Undertaker. Just a cage match. This is what's going to be. And it's going to be a barroom fight from some 80s movie. This is going to test every limit that we have. I guarantee it.
Clemson Tom, again, is on Twitter at Clemson Tom. You can check him out over there. So first and foremost, Tom, when we dive back into it as well, I think about the crowd, right? Like when you've got rain-soaked environments, you know, when the elements come into play in a game like this, you can have lighter turnout. Maybe fans are a little bit, you know, hushed and soaked. I know that wasn't the case when Notre Dame came through a few years ago, but now that it looks like the weather's going to be a lot better, man, I really think this will be the most electric environment that NC State's ever walked into. And I'm not saying they're not ready for it, but I do think that there's an adjustment period for any team that steps into this type of hostile environment, especially when they've never been there.
Look, we had with Louisville, when it went down, like Louisville threw that pass, they're like, did he get the first down? Did he not? It's going to be very similar to that, in my opinion. I think it's going to be just stupid loud. Like, I think it came out to be like it was like standing next to a jet engine, like it was that loud. And in the first series of the game, Lamar Jackson couldn't get the audibles off, couldn't get the snap count down. I think they took 3 delay penalties on their first drive. And that was due to the fans just not being quiet and being loud. By doing that, the fans can create their own entity out there to where it can affect the game. It clearly can affect the game. The players on the field can't hear anything. There's going to be a snap count adjustment. They can't hear the audibles. Are they going to run the right plays? They're not going to get the ball off in time. And there's a lot that can factor into that. And it's going to give NC State a little bit of a headache for sure.
Tom, are you surprised? Well, I don't know if maybe surprised is the right word, but you know, are you shocked at the defense? I think that's the best thing. I mean, I don't know if it's surprise or shock or whatever, but it's just weird how Clemson's played defensively this year. They have not been what I think people thought they would be at this point.
Yeah, yes and no. I wasn't in the beginning of the season because I knew we didn't need to ball out, call everything, show, be overly physical. And then it was Wake Forest, like, okay, we need to start turning it on. And we didn't. And the excuse was, oh, we had like 4 starters out. Well, that's really cool. You had 4 starters out in man coverage when they were getting burned. I mean, they were getting burned like a bad steak, at a tailgate. I mean, they were getting burned like you're making s'mores. Like, make the adjustments, go to man. But I'm not a defensive coordinator. I don't get paid millions of dollars to make those adjustments. But as I'm walking, River Street in Savannah and popping in and out of different water holes, taking out the game, that's what I would have done. And I think a lot of people probably would. But that's why you pay your defensive coordinator the check that he gets. So maybe it was a learning lesson for Old West. I don't know. Maybe he saw something in zone that wouldn't have worked. He's clearly a lot smarter than anyone probably listening to the live cast that we're doing right now about, defenses and everything else. But he's going to have to make some adjustments against NC State, that's for sure. But I know Coach B would have probably tried to choke out some kids on the sidelines or something, because there was a lot of miscommunication going on. There was a lot of just not Clemson defense on Saturday. And even talking to some of the older players that coached or were coached under Coach B, that was not Clemson defense right there.
And I'll take it a step further, Tom, with the defensive side of the football. I mean, do you think it's more or less just the chess match, that Wes Goodwin hasn't learned maybe to adjust as quickly to the opposition as maybe a seasoned veteran like Brent Venables?
Possibly. I mean, that's another avenue you can really talk about. Are those things going to kind of come with time? But he was under Coach B for years. You would think certain things like that are going to get brought up, and he's going to learn from those adjustments. But, I mean, yeah, you could chalk it up to being first-year defensive coordinator, still trying to figure that part of the game of it out. But it almost cost us the game. So, I mean, hopefully he figured it out a lot quicker.
Listen, I'm with you. Follow Tom on Twitter at Clemson Tom. I think that's been the biggest surprise. Obviously, there's some health issues on the back end of that secondary. Some of the players on the defensive front haven't exactly, been 100%. And you've had, Brian Brzee be out because of the death of his sister tragically. And then, of course, Tyler Davis and Trey Williams, some guys have been knocked around, and Xavier Thomas hadn't even played yet. And if you read Xavier Thomas's social media feed, Tom, you made it, you kind of came out with your statement about NC State and how you feel about them. I mean, it does feel like when Xavier Thomas gets out there, he's looking forward to really showcasing how he's transformed himself.
Yeah, I hope so. Is he going to be playing Saturday?
I don't think so. Well, we have not gotten verification of that. We won't know. Dabo, I don't understand this. Like years ago, Tom, they used to put out an injury report, and then that kind of went away. And now Coach Swanny will say, look, we're not going to tell you anything until Saturday. So at this point, I don't know if it'll be the case. XT sounded like he wants to try to play, but it's really going to come down to how his foot's feeling.
Gotcha. Man, to see him out there, man, you want to see him, 5-star kid, grew up in the state of South Carolina. You want to see him out there. But honestly, if he ain't ready, he's not ready. We need to have our best guys out there. He would clearly help in the rotation. But honestly, man, put me at defensive end, put me at middle linebacker, strong safety. Swanny, I got like one play left in me, brother.
I'm sure you do.
If there's only 2 teams I'd waste it on, NC State and South Carolina. Other than that, I don't need to be out there. But golly, man, NC State, even their fans are just horrible. Their coach is just all the comments he says and how the fans can defend him just proves how dumb they can be. And man, I hope we just annihilate them tomorrow night, man. I cannot wait. The countdown's begun. I'm getting pumped up just thinking about it.
Well, when you look at the Atlantic Coast Conference standings too, and Dabo Swanny will tell you can't win the Atlantic Division with a win on Saturday. But prior to the year, most people would have said that either Wake Forest or NC State was probably going to be Clemson's biggest threat. Now, we've seen Florida State. They're undefeated so far this season. We've seen Syracuse. They're undefeated as well. I mean, there's some argument that the Atlantic Division of the ACC right now is as solid as maybe anybody, given the fact that you've got 4 teams that are 4-0 and a 3-1 Wake Forest team, which lost a double overtime game to Clemson.
Yeah. No, yeah, something happened with the ACC. It's getting turned around a little bit. I mean, rarely are you seeing a Syracuse 4-0. They've been 4-0 in years. And then I'm glad to see Florida State's kind of on the up and up. It's a rival, but I like playing Florida State when they're good, not when they're, calling fake coronavirus plays. And, you can't play them because they don't want to get burnt 70-0.
Right.
But I got my tickets for Florida State already. I can't wait to get up there. What's that? That's in like 2 weeks. That's always a fun environment to go to Tallahassee. But I'm not even thinking about Florida State right now. I'm just thinking about the other team in red that resides in the state capital of North Carolina and their horrible barbecue that they've got in Raleigh. It's just not for me, man. I don't like anything about Raleigh. I don't know if I've mentioned it enough on this.
Yeah, tell us how you really feel.
But man, I don't have any feelings towards Raleigh at all. I don't like the Crabtree Mall they got there. I don't like anything about Raleigh. I don't like their hockey team. Nothing, man. I don't like the state capital. I don't like how you pronounce the word Raleigh. Nothing about it is cool. God, man, I just really, really hate NC State.
Couple more minutes here with Clemson. Tom, we haven't really talked about Will Shipley, but he's off to an unbelievable start. He's attempting to become just the third Clemson player to rush for a touchdown in each of the first 5 games of a season with a pretty elite group. James Davis, who did it in 2006, and Travis Etienne, who did it back in 2018. Just some of your thoughts on what you've seen out of Shipley so far this season.
Will's he's doing good. For some reason, he hasn't lived up. I'm expecting a lot more out of him, but he has these sparks.
He's got
Wolfpack. He'll get the ball.
He's got Wolfpack blood in him, Tom. He said so. He's got 26 family members. Both parents are Wolfpacks. You like Will Shipley.
No, a blood transfusion. You didn't hear about it. Don't worry about it. He's orange. We gave him a blood transfusion. That's fine. That's why his mustache hasn't grown in all the way, because the blood transfusion messed him up, and that's why you look at him. He's fine though. He's fine. He can have family members that are Wolfpack. That's fine. He's converted. He's a Tiger now, and it is what it is. No one's perfect. His mom and daddy went there. They're not perfect people, but we've accepted them as our own. I'm pretty sure they're going to be wearing orange on Saturday, and that matters. That's it. He's like the kid from the Jungle Book. He was just raised different. Now he's with us.
Follow Clemson Tom on Twitter at Clemson Tom. So, Tom, again, going to be a big game in Death Valley. If you go to, making a prediction here on this game, and we rarely ask you for a prediction, but given how you feel about NC State, what would you say this final score is going to be tomorrow night in Death Valley?
Dad, I don't know, man. I'm still so close to doing a video, Swanny, you have no idea. My wife even said, if you're going to do it, you need to do it big. And Caitlin was never a fan of me doing the videos because of everything. But I'm still so close. I've even had people reach out like, bro, you have to. I'm talking like former players, like we need one. I'm like, man, I don't know. But I don't know what it is. I'm still close to doing it. I can't do a score prediction. But all I know is we're going to win, and we're gonna just hurt them. I don't care what we got to do. First play of the game, everyone needs to get a 15-yard penalty. We need to let them know we're going to be there for 4 quarters. The stadium's going to be electrified. It's a night game in Death Valley. We've got the longest home winning streak. It's going to be loud. It's going to be rowdy. It's going to get dangerous on that field, bro. We have got to come out with a sledgehammer and just swing it. It's got to be insane on that field. I can't wait. My prediction is pain, and Dave Dorn's going to have a whole nother excuse. Him and his little Adidas T-shirts that he wears.
Tom, buddy, always appreciate you. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, my man.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
There he is, Clemson Tom from down in Orlando, Florida, where they were hit pretty hard yesterday by Hurricane Ian. 803-450-0086. We will still attempt to connect with former Clemson Tiger head coach Tommy Bowden as well in hour number 2 to get his thoughts on the Tigers and the Wolfpack as these two teams at the top of the ACC battle for supremacy potentially in the Atlantic Division. But again, you've also got a big matchup between Florida State and Wake Forest this weekend in Tallahassee. Stay with us. Happy Friday, everybody. College football on the docket. Clemson Sports Talk on your computer and phone. Put the .com on it, doggone it. ClemsonSportsTalk.com, the most digital content covering your Clemson Tigers. So, again, some great articles up right now. Looking at the front page of the website, I think everything currently not marked as premium. What does that mean for you? Anybody can access it. What does it mean if it's premium, Swanny? That means you can join us for $1 for 3 months or $63.17 for a year of coverage of your Clemson Tigers. And check out our website right now. It is a lot of fun, and we're trying to build a great community. We certainly have a large community of following on social media at Clemson Sports on Twitter and Instagram, but we would love to have you join us over on our website as well, where you can get the CST Radio Rewind. What is that? That's kind of like the podcast edition, except it's hosted over on our website. Lots of great content, quotes, videos, and again, that article on Peyton Page right now, turning right in the Paul Bistro, put Peyton Page in better shape and on the field. Peyton Page, Clemson's big-time interior defensive lineman that I expect next year to have a big impact for Clemson. And I remember Peyton Page when he's coming out of high school. You stand by these guys when they are on campus for a visit, and you go, man, this guy's put together. And Peyton Page was the first guy that really kind of framed up and reminded me, not as tall as Dexter Lawrence, but man, he had that girth, that thickness in his shoulders and his upper body that you just went, whew, this kid's going to be somebody. And speaking of kids that are going to be somebody, some big names are going to be on campus in Clemson this weekend. We put out these notifications earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, but just a couple of names here for you. KJ Bolden, the 5-star safety out of Buford High School, going to be in Tiger Town, along with 5-star linebacker out of Jefferson, Georgia, Sammy Brown, who we did an exclusive interview with. There you go. There's a reason. Put your dollar into the system. Join us. Go listen to that interview. $1, and you're a part of the team. A 4-star offensive tackle, Cam Pringle, and then Tavoy Fegan, going to be in Clemson this weekend. So just a couple of the names, along with Clemson commit Christopher Vazina. Also, several other big-name prospects going to be in town, and I know everybody's looking forward to King Joseph Edwards, who's got to have one of the best names in the business, along with Clemson commit Ian Reed going to be there as well, and Assad Brown. So a lot of talent rolling in for a top 10 matchup. And I bet you with the weather conditions improving, players who maybe were debating, what to do are probably deciding that, yeah, you know what? I think we'll go ahead and lean in. I think we'll go ahead and lean in on it. 803-450-0086. That is a text line and a phone line. Again, thank you for being a part of the program. Appreciate Clemson Tom. Don't forget Tommy Bowden coming up in hour number 2, ahead of what could be a monster weekend just in terms of the pecking order of college football, especially if you look at the Power 5. Currently, there are 19 undefeated Power 5 teams. And after this weekend, and I guess I'll give you the rundown of who those 19 teams are. That would be nice, Swanny. So the current undefeated teams in the Power 5, Clemson, Florida State, Syracuse, NC State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Minnesota, Southern Cal, UCLA, Washington, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss. So you're gonna be losing a few off of that list this weekend for sure. So at best, next weekend, when you talk about Power 5 teams that are undefeated, I think that number at best will be 17 because Kentucky is undefeated. They take on Ole Miss. There'll be a loser there. That takes us to 18. And Clemson and NC State face off, and that takes us to 17. But a lot of the other undefeated teams in college football are facing what you would label, quote unquote, decent competition. I mean, Oklahoma State is ranked 9th. Baylor has a loss at 16th. There's a chance that Oklahoma State could lose. That would drop you down to 16. Michigan's 4-0. Iowa's putrid on offense, but they're 3-1. Who knows? Maybe Iowa pulls an upset special. Oklahoma is ranked 18th, and TCU is one of those undefeated teams. If you believe Oklahoma's going to win that game, that's going to trim one of the undefeated teams from the list. Arkansas and Alabama. Do you think the Razorbacks at home? I know they're heavy underdogs. Alabama's favored by 17. Could they pull the upset? I don't think Rutgers will beat Ohio State, to be honest, but Rutgers is a 3-1 team. Florida State's a 4-0 team taking on a 3-1 Wake Forest. So we could see this list. We could see this list get down into like 12 or 13 teams in the Power 5 by the end of the weekend. I mean, it is a great weekend of college football matchups. No kidding you. And again, I think that kind of the teams that are remaining undefeated and sitting there at the top of the polls, I mean, the likely people to stay undefeated would be Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Southern Cal. I mean, Clemson's got a chance to stay undefeated, but they could very easily be the loser of this matchup against NC State on Saturday. You're going to see this go from 19 down to probably 15 or less by the end of the weekend. I feel pretty confident in saying that. It is a big weekend in the world of college football. The pecking order will be challenged, if you will, this weekend. And can you imagine what if Arkansas, pig suey. What if Arkansas knocked off Alabama? Holy storylines. Stay with us. Rocking and rolling along with you on a rainy, and I do mean rainy. Like, this is the kind of rainy day where you're just like, holy moly. Oh, I mean, downpours. Don't love it. I mean, I like the sound of the rain. This has felt like a day, though, quite frankly, where I have wanted to take a nap all day long.
I love the holiday season.
It's not the holidays. I just want to take a nap. Pump the brakes, Homer. 803-450-0086. Again, this matchup between Clemson and NC State. There's so many storylines that kind of go into it. And I'll be interested to hear what Tommy Bowden has to say coming into this game, because it's such a big game for the Wolfpack. I mean, it is as significant of a contest as they have maybe ever played in. And that's saying something. And the pressure in Death Valley tomorrow night, no matter what the weather's like, the pressure in that venue. So here's what I'm going to say to you Clemson Tiger fans. And look, if you're a Gamecock hanging out with us and being a part of the program, thank you.
So you could continue to peek over the fence at the best radio show in the nation.
The late, great Cleveland man. But here's the thing. This is the truth about this matchup tomorrow night. And I feel like NC State fans need to give me their full undivided attention as they hang out with us here today. Clemson fans can be complacent. Clemson fans have been complacent. And so I think it can be perceived from the outside that the complacency will exist again in Death Valley tomorrow night, 7:30 on ABC. But you couldn't be more incorrect. No, you're correct. Tiger fans have been complacent. And I'm going to tell you, all you Clemson fans right now, go walk into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and look in your beady little eyes and tell the truth. You get complacent. You've been complacent. You've been the best team in the Atlantic Coast Conference by a mile for nearly a decade. I mean, you have dominated this league. If you've been beaten, it's been some kind of fortuitous field goal. Something weird has happened. There has not been a team in the Atlantic Coast Conference that just has come in and dismantled Clemson since like 2013. 2013. Nearly a decade, Clemson has just been lights out. And some of you may not want to admit it today, but you have been complacent.
Forget you, pal. Thanks for nothing.
And you need to suck it up, Buttercup, and just face the music. But here's what I know, Wolfpack Nation. Tomorrow night, that Clemson Tiger fan with the beady little eyes that was just staring in the mirror, admitting the truth that Swanny has brought to light, that fan will not be complacent tomorrow. And that fan was not going to be complacent tomorrow, even without a little pep talk from yours humbly. Because here's what Clemson fans will do. And I appreciate this. I appreciate this about the Tiger faithful, the 85,000 strong that'll be pouring into Death Valley tomorrow in preparation for a matchup against NC State. They will be behind this Tiger team, because when there is ever any indication, it is like, I know Tigers don't travel in, groups, but this is when the Tigers do travel in a group, let alone a pack, if you will, for our Wolfpack fans. And so here's what will happen tomorrow in Death Valley. Win, lose, or draw. At any moment where this fan base feels like this team doesn't have the juice, at any moment where this fan base feels like this team may be injured, so to speak, at any moment where the fans feel like this team may be threatened by the Wolfpack, there will be an amplitude of volume in that stadium, the likes of which no NC State fan has ever been a part of. You've never been in that arena. You've never faced that music. And I don't care what you thought about beating Clemson a year ago. As I said earlier this week, that was the worst thing. That was the worst thing that NC State could have done for this season and the outcome tomorrow in Death Valley. You see, if the Wolfpack had gotten beaten last year, if Clemson had survived by the skin of their teeth like they did this past week against Wake Forest, then I bid you an opportunity to win in Death Valley. But I think tomorrow, the pressure cooker that is the environment in this game is going to be perhaps the single most impactful thing that happens. And I think it's going to be to the detriment of the Wolfpack, because fans have stewed over that loss in Raleigh for a year, and they are looking for revenge. The team may not be, but I assure you, the orange-clad faithful in Death Valley tomorrow night, they are seeking revenge, and they are going to come out like some fierce Tigers You can bet your bottom dollar that that'll happen. With a quick break, we'll come back. We'll put a bow on hour one. Stay with us. Final segment of hour number one. Again, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Going to be a busy day in the world of college football tomorrow. Actually, put out a scheduled tweet earlier on Twitter at Clemson Sports, Instagram as well. Follow us there and come join us on our Facebook page. And just help us grow. That's all we can ask, is that you help us grow. Taking a look at it, though, here's kind of a rundown by timestamp and channel. And this is why I do it, partially for you, partially for me. On ESPN at noon, you've got Kentucky at Ole Miss. Also at noon on ABC, you got Oklahoma at TCU. And on the Big 12 network at noon, you've got Texas Tech at Kansas State. By the way, shout out to my dad, because he was the guy that said, you should do something like this. Like, he wanted me to do an article, and I'd love to do an article. And we actually do like a around college football preview, but this little snippet to me is easy on the eyes and shareable. 3:30 on CBS, Alabama's at Arkansas. Also at 3:30 on Fox, you get Oklahoma State at Baylor. Also at 3:30 on ABC, Wake Forest is at Florida State. At 4 o'clock, interesting affair on the SEC Network. Texas A&M, who, if you ask me to describe Texas A&M, it would be like asking me to describe a color to someone that cannot see. I cannot describe Texas A&M. Like, I tend to think if you asked me to describe a color to somebody, I could do red because I would say hot. Could do blue because I would say cold. But if you told me, how do I describe orange to somebody, I couldn't do it. I could not describe Texas A&M. They can either be a title contender or a train wreck. And I'm not sure there's much in the middle. They are on the road at Mississippi State. Stark Vegas could be another big punch in the gut for the Aggies if they can't find a way to win that ball game. 7:30 on ABC, your Tigers hosting NC State. Also at 7:30 on FS1, Texas hosts West Virginia. And a late night kickoff out west as Oregon host Stanford at 11 o'clock. So those are 10 college football games to watch tomorrow. Not really rated by what I think is a great game. Lots of good games in there. Tried to give you at least a game in each time slot. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. Again, go check out that graphic on our Twitter account at Clemson Sports. 803-450-0086. So let's talk about this Florida State Wake Forest game. We got Tommy Bowden coming up in a few minutes. We can ask him a little bit about it too. But, when you think about just kind of the shocking turn of events that is in the ACC, it's not so much that Clemson has become this power that's ahead of Florida State, but it's the fact that the Wake Forest of the world and the NC States of the world have sort of surpassed the Seminoles. And Mike Norvell has come in. He's gotten the Seminole program more respect than it's had since Jimbo Fisher was there. There's a belief that Florida State is back. And this is the kind of game that they have to go out there and prove it, because this is still a team that has recruited incredibly well, especially by comparison to Wake Forest. I mean, there is no doubt that the Seminoles have been one of the better recruiting programs in recent memory, even when Willie Taggart was there. They're doing a great job recruiting. But yet the Seminoles have not finished above Wake Forest since 2016. 2016, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly on that one. Just let that seep in for a second. And that includes the COVID year where, Notre Dame was in the league and all that. Florida State, the last time they finished ahead of Wake Forest was 2016. I mean, that'll blow your mind a little bit. Florida State that season went 10-3 overall, 5-3 in the league. Wake Forest was 7-6, 3-5 in the league. Since then, in 2017, Wake Forest was 4-3 in the conference, 8-4 overall. Florida State was 3-5, 7-6. 2018, Wake Forest was 3-5 in the league, 6-6 overall. They were ranked ahead of Florida State, who was also 3-5 in the league, 5-7 overall. 2019, Wake Forest was 4-4 in the league, 8-5 overall, ahead of a 4-4 Florida State team who was 6-7 in the league. 2020, the COVID-19 season, Wake Forest was 3-4 in the league, 4-5 overall. Florida State was 2-6 in the league, 3-6 overall. 2021, Wake Forest was 7-1, 11-3 overall. Florida State was 4-4, 5-7 overall. I mean, that for FSU, right? Like you can think about Clemson in a couple of weeks rolling into Tallahassee. But isn't this like the first step for the Seminoles? You got to get past Wake Forest. And then eventually, you got to figure out how to get past Clemson and NC State as well. But the Seminoles will take on the Demon Deacons 3:30 p.m. on ABC Saturday in what feels like, or tomorrow, in what feels like a must-win game for the Spark to make a push to the top of the ACC from this observer's perspective. Tommy Bowden joins us next. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you on a Friday afternoon, a rainy Friday. Hurricane Ian, the outer bands coming through the Midlands as we speak. Looking better and better for Clemson football on Saturday in Death Valley. Last night, the Gamecocks with a 50 spot. Put a 50 spot on the board against NC State, 50-10, the final score there. Interception on the second play, though, for Spencer Rattler. I guarantee you, if you are a Gamecock fan, when that happened, you were like, oh, my goodness, what world am I living in? Also, last night, a scary moment in the NFL with Tua Tagovailoa being hit just a couple of days, being actually slung to the ground just a couple of days after taking a big hit, and his hands sort of contorted just in a weird manner and weren't moving. It was a scary moment. Tua apparently in good spirits, but the NFL and the Miami Dolphins somewhat under fire because of that situation. 803-450-0086. A lot of big games going on in the world of college football this weekend, but none bigger than the matchup between the Tigers and the Wolfpack in Death Valley. And former Clemson Tiger head coach Tommy Bowden joins the program here on a Friday afternoon to dissect it all. Coach, welcome in, and certainly hope you guys made it through Hurricane Ian relatively unscathed down there in the state of Florida yesterday.
Yeah, we're a long ways away from up in the Panhandle, down around Tampa. So we never had any rain, wind, sunny every day. So it was feel sorry for the people down there in Tampa, St. Pete, and the Fort Myers area, but we were in good shape here.
Oh, well, that's good. And it looks like the way things are going, at least right now, for those Tiger fans that are going to be in attendance at tomorrow night's game in Tiger Town, that Hurricane Ian has shifted further to the east, and perhaps there may not even be a drop of rain during the ball game, which would be incredible given a couple of days ago the path that was on. And so there's been preparation, right? These coaches have gone through, the wet football drills and all kind of stuff like that, just in case. And, when you give up any amount of time at practice, you know how it is. I mean, that's lost time to prepare for something else. How impactful could anything like that be? I mean, would they have spent a legitimate amount of time on something like that, thinking that they were going to have a lot of rain tomorrow night?
Probably would have taken maybe a 10-minute period a day, and then let the center quarterback exchange, shotgun snaps, running back and the quarterback, running back quarterback ball exchanges, and then the receivers catching some wet balls, quarterbacks throwing some wet balls. I don't think they would spend more than 10 minutes a day doing something like that. And then, so they're really not going to waste a whole bunch of time. Biggest thing would be if they would have gotten rain, how much you're going to affect your game plan as far as a team that's maybe be able to run the ball a little bit better. The throwing the catching is obviously more difficult. So it doesn't look like that's going to be a factor. So you should really get a pretty much 100% offensive package and defensive package if the weather holds off.
Well, it was a whale of a game this past Saturday up at Winston-Salem, 51-45 double overtime victory for Clemson. Sam Hartman was sensational for Wake Forest. And then DJ Uiagalelei, maybe, he's been better this year than he was a season ago. There's no doubting that, but it kind of felt like a little bit of a coming out moment for a young man that had sort of been, I guess, in a bit of an incubation period over the past 12 months or so.
I would imagine he challenged himself going against Sam Hartman. Many people felt like Sam Hartman might be the cream of the crop of the ACC this year. I'm sure he saw that as a personal challenge. And I tell you, he did a good job as far as his be able to compete throw for throw with Sam Hartman, because if you look at the stats toward the end of the game and his productivity in key situations, DJ really made some throws in key situations. So I think it might have been a lot of it. He might have risen to the occasion, playing with a little chip on his shoulders about Sam Hartman, and he really played well. If he can keep that up, and they're definitely a playoff team if he can continue to perform like he did against Wake Forest. Yeah,
the thing I noticed, maybe more than anything, is the touch that he's throwing with this year. We've kind of seen it emerge. Last year it felt like everything was a fastball. I mean, if it came out of his hand, it was a rocket. And there were just some very, touch passes that he was making that I thought, that's an NFL throw. That's the kind of throw you have to be able to make, to play at the next level. And so I'm with you. I think we saw him take some strides forward. Now the question becomes, can he carry that over against what may be one of the better defenses in the Atlantic Coast Conference in Dave Doran's Wolfpack squad that's coming to town?
Well, there's no doubt. The pass rush is going to be on him just a little bit closer. There'll be a little more times he'll have to move off the spot and not throw in rhythm. The coverage might be a little bit tighter. This is going to be a little bit better defense than what he saw last week versus Wake Forest. And, if you go back to the overtime throw, he had, I think, to a tight end down the middle, or to put the game in the overtime. When you go back and look at that several times in several different views, traditionally you wouldn't throw that ball. The one I'm talking about, he was covered. He had a guy, I think he had a guy underneath and over top, and they just didn't get their heads around. So that same throw against NC State, I don't know if he'll be able to make that one, but I think the challenge is going to be a little bit greater defensively from what NC State brings to the table.
Oh, yeah, there were several throws in that game, especially in the latter stages when Clemson needed them, where DJ threw it into a tight window, and you almost held your breath for a second. Athleticism, athleticism, though, starting to show up. You mentioned Davis Allen, the tight end. We saw Jake Brenningstool. Those two guys combined for 10 receptions and 3 touchdowns. And I've been saying all along, right? Like, if you look at Clemson's success that they had in 2016, so much of it was Deshaun Watson finding Jordan Leggett at tight end. And it hasn't been a weapon for Clemson really since 2016, almost 6 years. And if that can improve, I mean, that's got to take a lot of burden off of DJ's shoulders.
Well, it really does. And not only that, it puts the extra stress on the defense because how are you going to account for that guy? It's easy to double up on the wide receivers. Most of your defensive schemes from the secondary standpoint are geared toward doubling those guys. But when you have a guy in the middle that can pretty much, manhandle, not so much manhandle, but to run really good routes versus linebackers or a smaller DB and nickelback, it's a tremendous advantage. It's usually a closer throw. The tight end usually lines up closer to the quarterback, so it's a higher percentage throw and catch for the quarterback. So if you've got a guy that can produce like Clemson's has, and it really, really helps it helps the offensive scheme and the play calling, but also helps the quarterback in his percentages because, like I say, it's a shorter throw and catch.
So you go back and you watch that game, and obviously defensively, yeah, there's a few things, right? Like, I'm still undefeated as a head coach. I'm also winless. So there's a few things when you're watching that, coach, where you're just like, how is this working? This slow mesh, and why isn't Clemson forcing Wake Forest to run the football? I mean, what would have been your take if you were on the sidelines kind of watching that aerial assault unfold against the Tiger secondary?
Well, I'd like to see them, give a little more help to the corners. The way you do that, obviously, is with safety help over top. You can easily put your corner underneath both of those the wide receivers, and then give help over top. Anytime you do that, and that's the problem. When you take four guys, a corner safety and a corner safety, and dedicate them to two wide receivers, it gives you the numbers in the running game. And Wake Forest does have, at times, got a pretty productive running game. So I'm sure they just looked out there, and as soon as you started getting the safety, widening the safety out of the box and getting them a little wider to help those corners, then you have the numbers to run. And that slow mesh, that really hesitation by the back, they're good at it. Not a lot of teams do it. It's hard to prepare for. So obviously presented a lot of problems for Clemson. They'll have to address it with getting healthy guys back or some schemes over top, because if NC State doesn't take several shots, and I read a statement by the NC State offensive coordinator, he doesn't like to take those shots. And if he doesn't like to take them, that's going to be a tremendous advantage for Clemson this week.
Again, 7:30 on ABC, nationally televised, a top 10 matchup. NC State, one of their radio shows had me on this week, and we're kind of going through the game, and Clemson's accustomed to this moment, right? Like, they've played in a lot of these top 10 matchups. They've played in big games. I mean, this is the biggest game, literally, I think since like 1962 for NC State, where they were kind of still in the mix to get into the national championship hunt. And I think they lost to Penn State or somebody. Anyway, long story short, Coach, my question is, when you've got all of that for a team and they've never been in that, I mean, how much pressure and weight does that put on the Wolfpack shoulders going into what will certainly be a hostile environment on Saturday night?
Yeah, Clemson's going to be favored, and like you said, there is pressure for them to reach a plateau they've never reached. Clemson knows how to do it. Dabo and his staff know how to prepare his team mentally. They know how to keep the team focused. They played in so many of these games. The advantage in that regard goes toward Clemson. Now, the thing about NC State is they have an opportunity to go places they've never been before, and that's a tremendous motivating factor for NC State. But for NC State to beat Clemson 2 years in a row, it's hard to do. The mental intangibles go to Clemson in that regard. Even though NC State has an opportunity to go someplace they hadn't gone before, beating Clemson twice and then playing in Death Valley is going to be really, really difficult. I don't see it happening, but stranger things have happened. But I still think mentally, even though what NC State has on the table, I think mentally the advantage goes to Clemson because they are not happy about losing about losing last year.
That's what I said. I said the same thing. By the way, that's Tommy Bowden with us here. I said I think NC State's victory last season, maybe their worst enemy as they come into this game. Had they lost that game a year ago, then obviously maybe that turns their way. But we'll see. They got to play it out on the field. But the other thing too, I do want to ask you about. I know you're very in tune with what's going on at Florida State, Coach. They're 4-0. They've got Wake Forest this weekend. A chance for the Seminoles to move to 5-0, but you've also got an undefeated Syracuse at 4-0. You've got these two teams in Clemson battling that are 4-0. I mean, this is a league right now with 4 4-0 teams and a 3-1 Wake Forest. I don't know if it's the best division in college football, but the ACC Atlantic right now has not disappointed.
They really had, and the ACC really needed for Florida State to be a factor. They haven't been the last couple of years. We were kind of hoping Miami would take a step up this year, which doesn't look like they might not be able to do. I know it's early in the season, but like you said, Wake Forest, what Syracuse is doing, even Pitt over the division, and then Florida State making this comeback, it does a lot for not so much for the division, but overall perception of the ACC, because there was a little separation between the Big Ten and the SEC and everybody else. And now this conference and some of those teams are making some national push. I think ACC's got 5 teams in the top 25. So now if they can start keeping up and creeping up to in the top 15, top 20, top 15, and get a couple in the top 10, it would help. But again, this has really helped the ACC as far as the strength of the conference.
Yeah, you mentioned Miami losing Middle Tennessee, of course, coached by Rick Stockstill. He was on your staff at Clemson. Do you send him a text message when he picks up a win like that? Because that was a blistering.
Yeah. I sent him one a couple years ago. He won 10 games because 10 games is hard to win. But I sent him one after that. And if you watch that game and saw those deep balls, I said, Rick, I texted him. I said, I watched your game and I saw those deep balls. I'm thinking, who is that idiot calling all them deep balls? I said, then I saw your son Brent on the sideline in headsets. His son Brent is the passing game coordinator. He is going to be an excellent college football coach, by the way. Brent, his son, Brent Stockstill. But I'm sure a lot of those were his calls, which I'm sure Rick was double happy. I said, who was that idiot calling them deep balls? Then I saw your son on the sideline with them headsets. I knew who it was. So, congratulations to Rick and his son Brent, who's called an excellent game in the passing game.
What a win for those guys this past Saturday against Miami. So you said it, passing game coordinator. That's a relatively I don't know if you call it a new term. I mean, Clemson's got one now, and Kyle Richardson. It sort of came to fruition a few years ago with Brady at LSU, I guess, when Steve Ensminger was still the offensive coordinator. I mean, is that something that's been around for a while, or is this really a kind of a new phenomenon? And what do you think's brought it on, if it is sort of a new trend?
No, it's been around for a while. It just hasn't been fairly publicized. I think it really got a lot of traction when Brady at LSU
Joe Brady
got that title and did such a great job with the quarterback. And but I've always had a difficult time figuring, the running game, the passing game, they really go hand in hand. You got your heavy run game, run action pass. And I always felt it kind of hard to separate the two. I've never had a passing game and running game coordinator. A lot of people do it successfully. It's a way to keep a coach on staff. If he's looking for a title, you can give another title, which a lot of the young guys like to have, and guys that are trying to become a head coach, they think they have to have that title beside their name. So you can divide up more titles with a running game and a passing game coordinator, and sometimes it works. I've just never, always being a play caller for a long time. You always kind of like to have the full reins right there, and you get a certain mindset as you set things up as a play caller. Then all of a sudden say, okay, what do you want in the passing game? And the passing game coordinator throws something out of the left field because that's what him and the quarterback talked about. That's what the quarterback feels best about. But again, it doesn't necessarily go with how you've called the game so far. So but it works for a lot of teams, and it's just getting a lot more. It's getting a lot more TV time now.
Final question for you, Coach, and we'll talk about the running game here. Will Shipley has a chance this weekend if he gets in the end zone to join Travis Etienne and a running back you know very well, James Davis, as the only players in Clemson history to score a rushing touchdown in the first 5 games of the season. His touchdown run at Wake Forest was just sheer will, literally. I mean, from a kid named Will, just fighting to get to the end zone. What have you seen from him specifically that makes him such a great weapon for Clemson in this offense?
You know, when you look at him, you watch him warm up and stuff, you don't think much about him, but he runs like a big back. And by say a big back, a big physical back, he's tough to bring back. He's got tremendous leg strength, as you notice in some of these runs. All great running backs have great vision, and the vision he's got in between the tackle boxes. And he doesn't mind running into the between the tackles. There's an old saying, you know, some running backs want to go to heaven, but they don't want to die. And he don't mind dying in getting into the mix. He doesn't mind getting hit. And it's just he's got all the intangibles. It's been very impressive. And like you said, he's a lot more physical than what you would think.
Coach, listen, it is going to be an unbelievable weekend of college football. The ACC's got a couple of big games. The SEC as well, with Arkansas and Alabama facing off. Enjoy it. Take it all in. And we do appreciate you joining us today on a Friday afternoon.
Should be a great Saturday. Enjoy the game.
There he is, Tommy Bowden, 803-450-0086. What a quote. What a quote. What was it exactly? Running back. Some running backs want to get to heaven, but they don't want to die. Will Shipley, Clemson Tiger running back, looking for a big performance tomorrow against the Wolfpack of NC State. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Unbelievable commentary there from Coach Tommy Bowden, again off the heels of Clemson's victory over Wake Forest, who will go and take on his father's Florida State Seminoles. Of course, listen, I think, right? I mean, FSU is always going to be Bobby Bowden's club, but they'll be facing off in Doak Campbell Stadium earlier in the afternoon, a 3:30 kickoff on ABC, leading up to that matchup between Clemson and NC State. Rocking and rolling along with you on a Friday afternoon, a rainy Friday. Tommy Bowden just on the program. Great insight into this matchup between Clemson and NC State. And now for a little more insight into it, our good buddy, you know him from Lowell's Locks. He is Lowell, the producer extraordinaire. Lowell, what's up, man? Welcome in. Welcome back. How you been?
Bada boom. Realest champs in the room. How you doing?
I'm good, man. So you had to vacate the premises because of Hurricane Ian?
Yeah, I'm actually down back in your territory again, my old territory in Columbia, South Carolina. Went a little further inland to avoid the rain a little bit, and yeah, I'm just trying to get out of the way and get out of the flood zone.
No, look, I don't blame you, man. And I tell you, it's been the past, 8-10 hours here in the Midlands. It's been pouring rain.
Yeah, it's been ugly out all day. It really started last night, though. It started raining a little bit last night, and it has not slowed down.
Nope, not at all. So let me ask you this. I mean, it looks like the weather patterns are going to not have a ton of, poor rain conditions or even weather conditions at all for Clemson and NC State. I mean, did you think initially that, bad weather favored Clemson? And if you did believe that, would that mean that you think good weather favors NC State, or does it matter?
I thought from the perspective of the passing games, yeah, that would have favored Clemson just because I thought Clemson had the better of the two run games. So we don't know the status of Clemson's hurt defensive backs yet, and we won't know until game time on Saturday. But certainly not being able to throw the ball after watching what Wake Forest did to Clemson last week, you would have to think that would have favored the team with the better running game and the better run defense in that game. I don't know that it ultimately matters that much, but I do think it would have been a little bit of an added edge for Clemson.
Follow Lowell, the producer extraordinaire, on Twitter at Lowell CST. And again, he'll put out his locks tomorrow. So, Lowell, how have the locks gone this year? I mean, I've been keeping up with it. I did not double check you last week, but how are we doing in terms of your locks this season against the spread?
Well, I was riding a streak of being 500 pretty much every week outside of the first week where I went 4-2. I'm not exactly sure what my record was this week. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I went 2-4. So my first under 500 week. Yeah, it was not good. It was not a good week last week. So we'll have to get a little bit of a bounce back in.
What's kind of led to your downfall here the past couple of weeks? I mean, what would you say has probably been the biggest struggle?
It's just college football, man. It's unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen from week to week. The thing you think is going to happen does not happen. I thought I was going to get a backdoor cover in the Clemson-Wake Forest game when it went to overtime. I thought there was a chance that there would be a backdoor cover. If Clemson had gotten that 2-point conversion, I would have had the backdoor cover in that game, and Clemson came up just short on the 2-point conversion. You know what they say, good teams win, great teams cover, and Clemson didn't cover. So starting to question the greatness of the Tigers.
When you go into a matchup like this against NC State, the thing for me, and I talked about this earlier, Clemson's accustomed to this, Lowell. This is basically new territory for the Wolfpack. And you have to feel like, in a lot of respects, that heavily favors Clemson, just from the standpoint of the Tigers have been there and done that, and certainly aren't going to just relinquish anything to the Wolfpack without a fight.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's used to these primetime top 10 games. Certainly the coaching staff is used to it. Some of the players on that team are still used to that, to being at that level and playing at that level consistently. So, yeah, this is for really a prove-it game more for NC State, even though, Clemson's trying to get back, to what they were before the struggles last year. So there's certainly that pressure from that aspect, but NC State's trying to break through. They're trying to break through the ceiling. So I think there's more pressure on NC State in this game than there is on Clemson to get back to what they were, because NC State's trying to get there for the first time.
How do you define what you saw from DJ last weekend, kind of given the struggles he had a year ago? I mean, what did you make of that performance in Winston-Salem?
A lot of people were shocked. I was not surprised by it. This is what we talked about the last time I was on the show with you. We've seen when he's right mentally and he's healthy physically, we've seen his ability and what he can do as a freshman when he went to Notre Dame and set the record for most passing yards against the Irish-bound opposing quarterback. And even in the start before against Boston College, where he had a really, really nice game and leading that comeback in Death Valley. So I was not surprised by it, but I you wanted to see it. You wanted to see that performance where he comes out and just lights it up. And he really, really managed to do it. A lot of people will talk about whether it was Wake Forest and it was Wake Forest defense, and that's fine, except he's doing consistently what he couldn't do against anybody that they played last year. And so that's what you want to see. You want to see him connecting on, number one, the layups, which he is now doing consistently. But number two, he has become such a threat throwing the ball down the field. And the wide receivers obviously are stepping up and helping him out on some of these 50-50 balls, which is nice to see. The tight ends are getting involved now. The offensive line gave him very good protection, and he started delivering. So this is what we knew he could do, but now everything's kind of coming together at the same time, and we're getting to see the finished product.
He is Lowell, the producer, hanging out with us here on a Friday afternoon. We got a break coming up. We'll hit that. We'll come back. We'll find out what Lowell thinks of the Wolf Pack, maybe this team, maybe just in general, and also get some of his keys to the matchup tomorrow night under the lights, Death Valley, 7:30 on ABC, a top 10 matchup between Clemson and NC State. With a break, we'll bounce back right after this. Rocking and rolling along with you, Lawton Swan, the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk, and our buddy Lowell, the producer, hanging out with us today. So Lowell, Clemson Tom came on in hour one, and he just flat out said, I hate NC State. I hate everything about them. He went through a list of things. Matter of fact, he hates the Carolina Hurricanes because they play in Raleigh. Like, he hates all things that have to do with NC State and Raleigh, North Carolina. Where do you stand on this rivalry with the Wolfpack?
I got to say, I've been to Raleigh a few times. I have had a great time every time I've gone to Raleigh for a game. So, just outside of the football game in general, I think Raleigh's a really fun town. And it's a nice little college town. It's, there's things to do. There's cool bars. And I have no real issue with Raleigh or NC State necessarily. I will say that it helps that Clemson has dominated NC State over the past decade or so. But yeah, I really don't care. I really don't have an issue with them.
So, I mean, what about Dave Doran? I mean, are you
I'm not going to say I'm a fan.
Okay.
I'm not going to go out of my way to say I'm necessarily a fan of Dave Doran, but you've beat him pretty consistently, so it's hard to necessarily have a hatred there.
Don't you have to, though, if you are just and look, I think much less than SEC fans, Clemson faithful aren't ACC fans. They don't walk around pumping out the ACC chest because you stand on your own merit of how good your team is, right? But in terms of this league right now, undefeated NC State, undefeated Florida State, undefeated Syracuse. I mean, this at least feels like a year where there are some teams that are potentially making some noise, and that's great for this conference. I mean, it has to be good for the league.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me a little bit of that. I think it was 2016 where you had a bunch of ranked teams in there, and Louisville had Lamar Jackson. I mean, and even though Louisville's not undefeated, they're still going to be a threat to anybody they play because of Malik Cunningham. So this is the deepest the ACC has been in some time, and with everything going on with realignment and teams moving around, and you really needed a season like this to kind of give yourself some merit for why you should be one of those super conferences when the time comes.
Again, follow him on Twitter at Lowell CST. As for Florida State, they'll take on Wake Forest just before Clemson. That's at 3:30 start on ABC. The Tigers and Wolfpack will follow that game up, and who knows, man, if that game between Florida State and Wake is anything like Clemson and Wake last weekend, Clemson and NC State will start on another channel. So just your thoughts. I mean, do you see Florida State winning that game? They've recruited better than Wake Forest, but I noted earlier they have finished behind the Demon Deacons in the Atlantic Coast Conference every season since that year you just brought up, 2016. Do you think that this is the year that Florida State is getting their mojo back? Will they beat Wake Forest tomorrow?
What a question to ask, right? You think that back in the day, you never would have had to ask the question, can Florida State beat Wake Forest? But yeah, that's where we are now.
Lowell, it still sounds absurd.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we are. Dave Clawson's done a great job with that program, turning them around. I'm shocked, actually, that he hasn't been plucked up by a bigger program. But yeah, Florida State's trying to get it back, trying to get their mojo back a little bit. Jordan Travis is so much fun to watch. So Florida State can do it, but they're going to have to do it in a game like Clemson and Wake Forest played last week, where they're just delivering haymaker after haymaker to each other, and it's going to come down to, hey, who's going to get the ball last? That's really what kind of game that's going to be. I'm not a big believer in either of these defenses, to say the least. So, yeah, it's going to be the Sam Hartman and Jordan Travis show, and I think it's going to be a good one.
You know what's funny about it, and I don't know if that's the right word, but it does feel like, so Florida State's trying to get to this level where they haven't been in a long time, and a loss to Wake Forest still sends like the ultimate gut punch. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, if Florida State were to be facing Clemson this week and get beat by the Tigers, that doesn't make you feel like your season's derailed because Clemson is an elite football team. But if you get beat by Wake Forest, I think Florida State still feels the way that you and I both do about Wake Forest. And that'll be a serious punch in the gut if they get beat this week at home by the Demon Deacons.
Yeah, I think internally to their program, yeah, it'll feel a little bit like a gut punch. You still have to remember, though, Wake Forest, it's so weird. It's almost like when Georgia Tech had Paul Johnson, right? Like they could go out on any given day and beat just about anybody in the country. So and it's kind of the same, just in like an opposite direction in terms of their offenses. But it's kind of the same thing. Well, Wake Forest can come out. They can put up points on just about anybody. They can beat just about anybody. And so you shouldn't necessarily feel bad for losing to Wake Forest. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we're Florida State, right? Like we recruit in the top 10, top 15 every year. We've got national championships. We're trying to get more national championships. And so, yeah, it would be a little bit of a gut punch for what you've done so far this year to come out and lose to Wake Forest.
We got a break coming up. When we come back, we'll put a bow on the show. We'll get Lowell's prediction. I'll give my prediction on this matchup between your Clemson Tigers and the NC State Wolfpack in what it does appear like it's going to be pretty good conditions tomorrow night up in Tigertown. 803-450-0086. If you want to weigh in, head over to our website as well. Put the .com on it. Doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Our predictions next. Stay with us.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Friday afternoon, a football Friday. Several games going on tonight. None, to be honest with you, none that are like overly interesting to the world of college football fans. But tomorrow's slate will be a strong one with Alabama traveling to Arkansas, Florida State hosting Wake Forest, as we mentioned, and then that top 10 matchup in Tigertown that'll be taking place. Maybe the most interesting game today between a couple of undefeateds. UCLA hosting Washington 10:30 on ESPN. Lowell, the producer, though, hanging out with us today. And Lowell, I look at this game, and I'm sure you got some keys to what you think it's going to take, but I think first and foremost for me, defensively, I have been a little bit underwhelmed by the job that Wes Goodwin has done. I know there have been some injuries. We don't exactly know who's going to be there. You brought that up. We won't know that till 2 hours before kickoff. But I've just felt like this defense has not played with the same energy that it did under Brent Venables.
Yeah, I went back and watched the Wake Forest game again. I actually, in real time, it didn't feel like there were any adjustments being made. But you go back and watch, he did actually adjust his defense in that second half. Unfortunately, it just seemed like nobody was on the same page about what the adjustments were necessarily. So, like, you had one touchdown given up where I can't remember who it was playing corner, but he thought he was going to have safety help over the top because it seemed like Clemson was switching to a cover 2 to kind of prevent these deep balls, except the safety wasn't there. So it's just busted coverage. It feels like everyone's kind of new and everyone's trying to get on the same page. So you got away with it last week. I don't know that you can necessarily get away with that again this week. So hopefully they had a good week of film. Everyone's kind of getting on the same page here. And you can come out with a little emotion and energy, which how can you not be fired up? Game day in town, night game in the Valley. Hopefully we get a different looking unit this week.
Lowell, if DJ, we got about 4 minutes here, so we got to get through it pretty quick. But if DJ throws an early interception, does he just morph back into that kid a year ago that looked like he'd never thrown a football? Or do you think he's so, that he's in such a good spot that he's going to be able to recover from, sort of a blow to his, confidence?
No, I think he's good. I think he's good. I don't think an interception or a fumble or whatever, and we've seen him fumble a few times this year.
Yeah.
Now Clemson's gotten the majority of them back. I don't know that he's lost a fumble yet this year.
I'll be honest, that was one of my concerns if it was raining. I mean, he's a big guy, but he doesn't have a great grip on the football.
Yeah. He's dropped the ball a few times this year. I don't think though that I think he's in a much better place mentally. And you heard Dabo say that he was in a much better place mentally than he was last year. So I think that early on, especially if the team around him can pick him up, if the defense can pick him up and get a stop or get a turnover after, one of your own, I certainly think that it'll be like, okay, we're here. We're all here. We're all here to play this game and we're going to take care of business. So I think he will be fine, off of any turnovers, any interceptions, any fumbles, and especially because we saw him under pressure last week where he had to keep responding and keep answering every haymaker that Wake Forest was throwing out there to try and knock the Tigers out. He came back under pressure every single time and delivered. So that showed me that the pressure's not going to get to him.
His locks come out tomorrow. He is Lowell, the producer extraordinary, he is on Twitter at Lowell CST. All right, Lowell, give it to us. How does this one finish in Tiger Town tomorrow?
I got the Tigers covering. I got the Tigers covering. I had Clemson covering last week too, and I thought that they probably should have, especially when it went to overtime. But yeah, I NC State has been very underwhelming offensively, and they came into it, with everyone thinking they were going to be one of the better offenses in the ACC. They've been very underwhelming so far offensively. The offensive line has not played great. The running game has not played great. Devin Leary has been decent. DJ Uiagalelei has been better than Devin Leary, and no one thought that coming into the season. So I have Clemson covering. I think the defense is gonna step up. I think that defensive line specifically is going to come out and have a really, really good game like we haven't seen yet this year. And yeah, I've got the Tigers covering that 7.5, whatever it's sitting at now.
Again, on Twitter at Lowell CST. I kind of feel the same way. I think NC State's underperformed. I think Devin Leary is, a guy that hasn't played up to the caliber of what people expected. And I, too, think Clemson gets the JOBDONE, the job done against the Wolfpack tomorrow night, 34-20. Clemson walks away from the Pack in Death Valley. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers.